all set? Okay, well, good morning. I'm in the back in the office, protocol office here where we have these news conferences, and I'm here all by myself with the accompaniment of our wonderful technical staff who've made this possible. And I thank them very much throughout the pandemic for all the efforts they've made to allow us to continue to be accountable to you and to be accountable through you to the public. I would like to begin by acknowledging that today is Orange Shirt Day. Orange Shirt Day acknowledges the survivors of residential schools. It's a day to remember those who died in that school system and an opportunity to show our support for all those who were impacted by residential schools. And there's a generational impact of this, as we know as well. I had the chance to be up north in some of the remote villages and actually meet some of the survivors of residential schools and to hear them talk. Most of them are a bit older now about their experience of being literally forcibly taken away from their families at a very young age and forbidden to speak their native tongue, and on it goes from there, was heart-wrenching to hear that story and to learn it even later in life, because I didn't hear much about it when I was a history student studying Canadian history, because we didn't talk about these things very much. And so I think it is important that we take the opportunity on Orange Shirt Day to have local governments, schools, and communities come together and declare, as the day suggests, that every child matters, and to take action to ensure that is a reality, not just as relates to our Indigenous communities, but throughout the entire population of the province. Today, in particular, we honor the bravery and the resilience of those survivors, some of whom I have met, and they are brave, resilient people, but also to acknowledge that there is a generational impact, a historical impact, as we've seen with other communities as well, based on some of the historical trauma that they've experienced. And we acknowledge today that trauma and that abuse inflicted on generations of First Nations and Indigenous people, and acknowledge that we will work together to build a better future. So, excuse me, City Council is meeting today for the first time in the city's history on a kind of hybrid basis, where we have some people participating in person and others participating virtually. I will have two key items at the City Council meeting today. The first is the City of Toronto's COVID-19 Housing and Homelessness Recovery Response Plan. And that will be dealt with first up today, and it includes our urgent call to the federal and provincial governments to help us in reaching our goals and creating more housing options quickly for vulnerable people in the city. Our proposed plan calls for the creation of 3,000 permanent, affordable, and supportive homes within the next 24 months for homeless, vulnerable, and marginalized residents. The 3,000 permanent, affordable, and supportive homes would be comprised of 1,000 permanent new modular homes, 1,000 new permanent affordable rental homes created through acquisitions and shovel-ready construction projects, and new portable housing benefits that will assist a further 1,000 people to secure new housing and pay rent. And of course, by definition, those housing benefits can be put to work right away. You take the benefit with you to a place that's for rent, and you are able to have it become affordable because you have the money in hand. So that's probably the fastest of all. The plan also calls for funding to assist 2,000 of these residents with the supports required to maintain stable housing. This is the supportive housing we talk about, supports such as mental health services, assistance with daily living activities, and focused senior services. In many cases, the reason people end up without a permanent place to live is because there is no place for them to go with the supports that are necessary to address some of the particular issues they face in their life. So if you want to make sure that your governments are helping to help these most vulnerable of our residents, you should support this plan. If you want to see your government invest more in permanent, stable housing, not more temporary shelters, then you should support this plan. And if you, like me, believe that encampments in our city parks are illegal and unsafe, then you should support this plan. And I will acknowledge that the federal government in recent days have come forward with what I called a good start, which is a sum of money allocated across the country, of which we will be fighting hard to get our share, if not more than our share, given the prevalence of a particular problem here in the City of Toronto, just given the size of the city, to help with some of this. But more is needed from both of the other governments to address this meaningfully along the lines of the 3,000 units we think would allow us to put a huge dent into what is a very complex, perplexing, frustrating problem for us here in the City of Toronto and in other cities across Canada. I can tell you that from talking to my fellow mayors. The second key item will be the report from Dr. Davila on key actions City Council can take now to address the resurgence of COVID-19 in our city. We all understand the paramount importance of placing public health first, um, because a healthy economy, which we're also very working very hard on, requires healthy people to make it go and to keep it going. To that end, Dr. Davila has recommended a number of measures that City Council can approve today, and I hope will approve today, to further protect the health of our city. And I fully support these measures. I will be saying so as I've done before, and I am optimistic that we will be able to ensure that the rest of City Council supports these measures as well. From the beginning of the pandemic, we have always taken the advice of Dr. Davila and her team at Public Health Toronto, and I expect that Council will continue to function in that way. We know that cases have been increasing over the last few weeks and the last few days, and I know that public health is watching this very closely and will continue to make further recommendations as needed to protect the health of residents and to save lives. I talk to Dr. Davila, I participate in meetings with her every day and talk to her one-on-one virtually every day, and have encouraged her to come forward based on what is going on with the numbers and other trends she sees, and analyzing those numbers with whatever measures are necessary to preserve and protect the health and the lives of Torontonians, because that is our collective responsibility to do that, obviously within the context of the rest of society and its continued functioning. And the advice coming from her will be crucial in facing this resurgence. I am announcing today as well that I will be leading City Council and advocating by way of a motion added to her report when it's considered this afternoon, for more support for Toronto's restaurant industry during this incredibly tough time. The city's restaurants and bars are vital businesses in our neighborhoods, all of our neighborhoods across the city, and they've been hit hard by the events to date of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. I realize that these public health measures that are contained in Dr. Davila's recommendations today, and any future measures that may be necessary, along with reduced hours mandated by the provincial government, will have an impact, a negative impact on businesses that were struggling before, trying to keep the lights on and trying to keep people employed. That is why I'm asking Council to endorse 5 ways in which we can help restaurants through the resurgence, and send a united message as a council representing the entire city to the provincial and federal governments about specific support they can provide. These measures are based on feedback we got from the local restaurant industry when we consulted them a couple of weeks ago about things we could do to be helpful. Given the city's success developing the Cafe TO program and updating regulations to allow patio heaters so as to extend the outdoor dining season, I wanted city staff as well to work with the industry and with BIAs to make sure the municipal government is doing everything it can to support winter and year-round outdoor dining. So there are things we could examine there that we've seen in other cities, and things we could do here potentially to allow for more options to see people continue to be able to use this outdoor space during the winter months. I'm asking Council as well to support any move by the provincial government, which I would urge them to take, to extend the takeout and delivery of liquor sales for restaurants through 2021. I think the restaurants have found this to be helpful. I think people have liked it, and I would like to see the province extend it through 2021. I don't think it causes any harm to them financially or otherwise. Council is also being asked to support the federal government moving to support the restaurant industry to deal with the impact of the public health restrictions. If approved by Council, this would continue the advocacy and the discussions I've been having on a continuous basis, especially with the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Chrystia Freeland, even before she had the finance appointment. This motion asks the Council to provide solid encouragement to Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland as Minister of Finance as well. She has been extremely responsive to date in fashioning some measures that they're contemplating right now to help the hospitality sector, and I want to provide every bit of encouragement I can so that she's able to get those through her government and announce those and move forward with those. The speech from the throne in Ottawa committed to such support by stating, and I quote, "Help ease the impact that science and evidence-based decisions can have on local businesses in the short term. The government will work to target additional financial support directly to businesses which have to temporarily shut down as a result of local public health decisions." And it went on to say that in respect of other measures that had an impact on this business, hospitality, and food service and so on, that the government would look at targeted relief as well. City Council is also being asked to take a stand firmly against insurance companies gouging restaurants and bars when they come to renew their insurance. We have seen the evidence of institutions, establishments of this kind that are being asked to pay exorbitant increases in the cost of their insurance, which is highly inappropriate at a time of immense stress on those businesses, and at the time we're engaged in fighting a global health pandemic. This kind of increase is ludicrous, really can't have any kind of justifiable business or other rationale. And I think this is the wrong way to reward what I'm sure have been loyal customers of theirs, clients of theirs, of the insurance business in their hour of greatest need. The industry is, of course, provincially regulated, but I know Premier Ford and I are united against reports of restaurants experiencing this kind of skyrocketing insurance rate. And I hope this sends a message out to the insurance companies. They themselves should move to say we are not going to impose these kinds of increases on people that are struggling at this point in time, and they should just cut out and eliminate these kinds of astronomical increases right now before the government has to act. Finally, City Council will ask that the Government of Ontario continue the pause on commercial evictions until COVID resurgences diminish. This would help to protect the mom and pop shops that are struggling to hang on, as we've discussed, and to preserve our main streets. And it would just be an acknowledgement as well of the reality that if people are evicted from commercial premises, there's hardly going to be a lineup of people to replace them. And so it's in the best interest, actually, of these landlords themselves that these kinds of evictions not continue. I am committed to doing everything possible as a city government to help restaurants and other businesses that are hard hit by the public health measures, whatever they might be, that we have to take, including the ones that are being implemented, I hope, by City Council today in order to stop a resurgence of COVID-19. I believe that the City Council will be united in sending a strong message to the restaurant industry today that we support them, and in sending a signal to the provincial and federal governments that we need to continue to work together to help these businesses. And they have been very responsive to date on the kinds of programs they brought forward to do just that. And we are all just following and having some of these places closed or restricted in what they can do, public health advice, trying to preserve health and keep people alive. We continue to be committed to fighting this pandemic. Council has made clear that we have worked tirelessly over the last 7 months with the help of the other governments and great assistance from them and great response from them, but also with the help of city residents and businesses and charities. We've worked hard together to confront this virus. And that includes doing what we can as a city, and which we will continue to do to help businesses and residents with this struggle. Today, the Council will approve a plan, I hope, that will mean real progress for housing, and a plan that will be the latest measures that we would put forward to help stop the spread of the virus, and furthermore, to help put their support behind some plans and initiatives that will help the restaurant industry, which is particularly hard hit. I'm happy to answer your question.
Thank you, Mayor Tory. Thank you for joining us today. We'll now open the floor to questions. As a reminder, it's one question, one follow-up. First up, we have Claire O'Hara from the Globe and Mail. Go ahead, Claire.
Hi, good morning, Mayor Tory. Thank you for taking our questions today. I just wanted to follow up on the insurance coverage for restaurants situation. As you've probably heard, there's some restaurants that are actually being denied coverage and not just increases to their premiums. And I'm wondering if you have you met with Minister Phillips about this issue? And if so, what was the outcome of that meeting, or what would the next step be for these restaurants that are at risk in the next few weeks of not even having coverage?
We've had discussions about the whole point of insurance. Insurance is necessary for people to have. I mean, we mandated in the case of car insurance for individuals, but I think it's most people would accept the fact that all businesses and all homeowners in an ideal world would have insurance. And I think that for those who do have it, they shouldn't be put in a position where their insurance could be canceled. I think we're in an emergency now, a global pandemic, a health emergency that has these businesses facing all kinds of struggles. And the last thing we need to have is either an astronomical insurance increase or a cancellation of their insurance. And so, to me, the proper course of action would be to put a pause on all of that and to say that insurance would be maintained in place at the present price, as we've done in other areas where we've just put a pause on it and said that's what we should do, is to sort of freeze things for the moment until the pandemic is behind us, and then we can sort of see what steps need to be taken after that.
Great.
Follow-up?
Thank you, Mayor Tory.
Okay. Next up, we have Matt Bingley from Global. Go ahead, Matt.
Hi there. Mayor Tory, today Council will be meeting. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, pardon me. Today Council will be meeting with one fewer councillor. I'm just wondering, in the absence of Councillor Karygiannis, how quickly would you like to actually see Council address his absence so that the residents of his ward do have leadership during the pandemic?
Well, the people of Agincourt need representation. They need people to solve their problems and to speak for them. The recommendation in front of council today provides for, or in the next couple of days, provides for the seat to be declared vacant again in light of the court cases, and actually puts the options of an appointment versus a by-election in front of the council. So I would expect that it may well be the case that the decision will be taken during this council meeting, and then it would be up to the machinery of the election office to actually pick a date for the by-election. And so I think we'll be, if there is one, and I think we'll be getting on with that, post haste, because the people need representation, and we should get on with it.
Okay, I have no follow-up. Thank you.
Thank you. And then next up, we have Moment.
Good morning, Mayor. Councillor Mike Cole is bringing a motion forward this morning or at council at least this week to talk about businesses specifically in Little Jamaica along Eglinton West. He says that they've faced a double whammy between the pandemic and the ongoing construction of the LRT, and he wants the province to give them some sort of compensation. And he says he doesn't want programs, he wants actual dollars in the millions. And I just wanted to know from you, do you support that idea, and what kind of help do you think they should get?
It poses a bit of a challenge to retroactively suggest that with respect to a provincial transit project, which the Eglinton Crosstown is, that there should be compensation provided. I'm of the view that on future projects of this kind, there should be some allowance made from day one to assist the businesses that we know are affected by what are massive construction projects. I think that we will have a very good, solid discussion about both Councillor Cole's proposal and one that I believe is forthcoming from Councillor Matlow. I support both in the context of the principle of saying we should ask Metrolinx whether they would be prepared to consider some assistance for these businesses which have been hard hit for a long time. And Councillor Matlow's proposal, I know, contains a number of other measures we can do that are slightly longer term in their thinking about how we can revive the fortunes of a lot of these businesses in the wake of not just the transit construction, but just some special business challenges they faced, especially in the Little Jamaica area, which is such a historic and important part of the heritage of those of our entire community, but also of the Black communities in our city. So I will be supportive of these measures and advocating to the province that they should try and help out. But I think it's easier if you build this in from the beginning of transit projects as opposed to doing something, kind of 3/4 of the way through.
And so if I could just ask you a more general pandemic question. We know the numbers have been spiking over the last few days, and there's been a lot of talk about going back to other stages or changing some of the rules as we go forward. I just wanted to ask you, are there any specific markers that you're waiting to see potentially to send, excuse me, to send us back to another stage? Is there like a number or certain outbreaks that you want to see, or is it just kind of a general overview you're taking right now?
I've taken my lead from the medical officer of health, and I think she's been right in not citing some number, because actually the numbers have grown, considerably over the last few weeks. If you think back to the days when we reported well less than 100 cases in Toronto, and now we're, in the 300 plus area more than once on a repeated basis. What I've talked to her about this morning, and I've talked to her about pretty well every day, is not just the number, because I think that's how you can get trapped, but rather what is going on in terms of the pattern of the spread and where it's happening, and is that area kind of changing in a way that is negative and disconcerting? And I think the answer to the question is that there are signs of concern that are coming out of that kind of analysis, which they continue to do at Toronto Public Health. And so I will just say this. I have said repeatedly, and I repeat today, that any reasonable measures that she brings forward, and she's within her own rights to bring those forward based on her analysis of those numbers, but any reasonable measure she brings forward, I will stand up and support. And I will encourage my council colleagues to do the same, and if necessary, we'll advocate to the province that they should assist us in taking those measures. We must arrest this. We must arrest it in a way that protects all people and all businesses, and sometimes you have to take measures that affect people and businesses in a certain way in order to achieve a greater good over the longer term. But the bottom line is, as you watch this thing spread and you watch the patterns with which it spreads, you want to stop it before it gets back into long-term care, for example, or you want to stop it before we have to close the schools. I think we should be trying to keep schools open, to the greatest extent we possibly can. And so I'm having daily discussions with her, as are some of my colleagues that have sat around the strategic command table from the beginning. But I know that she's analyzing these numbers very carefully, and we're questioning her on that and discussing that with her and talking to the province every single day, multiple times in a day. And I think there will be more changes that come as we watch numbers get better or worse. But we have to take it day by day.
Okay, and lastly, we have Tiffany Hensby from News Talk 1010. Go ahead, Tiffany.
Hi, good morning. A couple of questions regarding the winter patios. Has there been any looking into of how much these commercial outdoor heaters would cost, and would restaurants be sort of forced to put out the money for these heaters? Would the city fund them? Has that been discussed yet?
We've had no discussion about funding this. We allowed heaters in an area where they previously weren't allowed on some of these curbside patios that we helped to create through Cafe TO to provide the revenue opportunities to struggling restaurants, and made the safety arrangements to have those heaters put in place, but at no time did we contemplate paying for them. And I have no contemplation of doing that right now with respect to winter patios. But I think what we can do as a government, as a first step, is to look at what is possible. I want an answer as to how much we can do, not how much we can't do, with respect to winter outdoor dining as a means of helping these businesses to stay alive. And so let's do first things first and see what's possible. I've seen bubbles used in New York. We've seen some patios that have put sort of temporary enclosures around themselves, and you have to be careful not to turn it into indoor space because then it becomes indoor dining. But I want somebody to look at this post haste and decide what we can do and where we can do it, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, and so sort of along the same lines, and you addressed this a little bit. How exactly is this going to work? You know, in the middle of winter when it's snowing and in potentially live lanes of traffic. Do you have any clarification on that yet, or is that something you're still looking into as well?
No, I have been very clear previously on that. The patios that are presently located in the curb lanes of traffic will not continue during the winter. It is not possible for us to do the snow clearing we have to do. The snow clearing would be cleared right into those patios, so it doesn't make sense. It's just not practical. We're talking about other kinds of outdoor patios that exist that could be adapted for winter use, and looking at those as a possible opportunity to provide for some further relief to the restaurant business. So we're not talking about the ones that are in the curb lanes of traffic, which will come to an end by November 15th or earlier if we have a snowfall, because we simply have to clear the snow, and people understand that, I think.
That's it for today. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.